This doesn't need to define you. There are ways to work through this.
You've recorded. Welcome to View from Under the Bus. And we're going to talk about the journey through chronic pain. I'd like to introduce Sean to you, who is an expert on chronic pain. And we're going to talk about some things that are relevant to life and how to get through, find possibilities, purpose, and peace through this difficult endeavor and journey that he's on, and so many other people are traveling these days through chronic pain. Welcome, Sean.
Good morning.
Would you like to share just a little bit about yourself before chronic ailment came into your life?
It came into my life in 2003. So it's been with me for quite a few years now, Sean. And I'm 61, soon to be 62. And my life before chronic pain, I was a very physical individual. Worked a lot of construction over the years, sales, but always very, very physical. I was a welder, pipe fitter, and just to kind of establish, I guess, a baseline as a welder, there's certain things that you need to learn to live with, which, one is there's a lot of hot sparks. And sometimes in order to just complete the job or complete the weld, you'll get a hot spark in your boot and you just need to let it burn in order to get through. So, I don't say that for any other reason other than to state that that was a level of pain that I was familiar with and willing to live through. And that pain was one that, well, I knew it would go away. It would heal. This is different. This is a pain that stays. This is one that I live with. This is a pain that tries to define me. And I am in the pursuit daily of not allowing that I set the parameters. I set the tone, not the pain. And sometimes I win, sometimes I don't. But the pursuit is still the same.
I think that's a very powerful statement, that you set the parameters and that you set the tone. And I think that is something that you've had to learn, I believe, through the process. So what happened that changed everything?
I was actually in the process of starting a business. I was going across town, stopped in traffic in an odd place in town, and nobody expected it, but we were all stopped. And evidently the guy behind me didn't expect it and rear-ended me, causing a fracture of C6, C7, and later to be determined what's a whiplash of the lower back and hip region, which is more of a secondary issue. But C6, C7 was my damaged area. It actually contused or bruised the spinal cord. Typically a bruise will go away in a week or two, but when you bruise the spinal cord, it takes a couple of 100 years, I would imagine, for it to heal. So that's something that continues.
Well, I think one thing, if I remember you explaining the accident, that when the car hit you, you hit the car in front of you,
Right.
then bumped back, and then got hit again. So it wasn't, I always call it like you were the ham in a car sandwich.
Mm, yeah.
It was that back and forth, which was the whiplash that created an injury that you weren't even aware of at first.
Right. Right. Well, and part of the problem is I saw it coming. I saw it in my rearview mirror, not a thing I could do about it. Natural reaction was I mashed the brakes down as hard as they would go. It turns out all four of the brakes on the vehicle I was in shattered. Didn't do a lot of damage to the vehicle other than bend the frame, but as far as physical looking damage, it didn't do much. I was not, I was a little bit rattled, but I didn't think anything was wrong, just a regular fender bender. Wife at the time was an ER nurse. She encouraged, admonished, pretty much demanded
Threatened.
that that I go get looked at. And they, took the pictures, and very soon after that, the neurologist called me in and kind of told me what was going on, asked me to walk across the room a couple of times, said I had something called clonus, whatever that is, something with your foot, but indicated to him that I had some damage. And the thing that really got my attention is he asked me if I had eaten any breakfast. This was about noon. And I had at that point. And I asked him why. And he said, well, because I'd like to put you into surgery this afternoon. And that really got my attention. Of course, we were unable to do that right away, but that was the beginning of the journey.
I think the other thing that you said, it bent the frame of the car, but it didn't look like much damage to the car.
Right.
And I'm thinking back as make a parallel to you. You didn't see much damage on you, but it bent your
Right.
frame.
Yeah.
It bent your
True.
frame. It bent.
Yeah. Good point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Didn't look like anything.
Right. Now, after, and the other statement that I remember you making is that the surgeon, when you did have surgery, said, put your house in order.
Yeah. He told me to go get my affairs in order. And those kind of things you just don't hear in the normal course of a day or even a surgery, really. So yeah, that really got my attention. And they ended up having to do it twice. Went in through the front, that didn't work, and then ended up going in through the back, and that finally took. I think that second surgery actually ended up doing a little bit of damage, but that's the risk that you take with those kinds of things.
So where were you at after that? How did you, the Sean that was in the car before you got hit and the Sean that came out after, what was the difference?
Honestly, being that I was, very, fit, I wasn't a posture of physicality, but, I was, fit. I did a regular exercise program all the time. And, I walked a lot, rode my bicycle a lot. And the progression downward was kind of slow. Of course, I wasn't able to do anything right after surgery, but I just thought that, after surgery, it was going to get better. It was going to be okay. It was going to solidify that area. And, even according to what the surgeon said, that, could very well just move forward and everything would be fixed. But it was a slow progression of realizations that, oh, I can't do that anymore. That hurts, or that wears me out, or, those kinds of things. And I'm probably a little slower than a lot of people, but it took me a really long time. I just thought that I can't do that now. I can't do that now. And as this goes on, year after year, even I start to get the message that maybe this is more permanent than what I had originally realized.
So you went from somebody that could physically lift and work hard for hours on end without having really any ramifications the next morning, just get up and do it again, to somebody that would work hard and then not be able to do anything the next day.
More like pay the price.
There you go.
Pay the price. There was a price to be paid, and it will be paid. Very, chronic pain, I almost talk as if it's a person, but it will be paid. It is demanding, and it will not be denied. Therefore, it must be dealt with, and that's essentially where I think we're going with all of this is, how do you deal with it? How do you move forward? It's been, almost 18 years for me. And, I've gone through a number of iterations, a number of realizations, and how to move forward, how to deal with this, how to reinvent yourself, is essentially what, you're talking about before and after. And that's essentially what I've had to do, is reimagine myself and reinvent myself into somebody that is productive with chronic pain.
There you go. Of course, I know Sean really well. I've known him all his life, and he's known me all his life. But one thing that, as we continue on in our many discussions, you will see that Sean is very articulate in his thoughts. And the other thing is that he's extremely determined. And he's an inspiration to me because he has chosen to not be static at where he was, but to find possibilities and how to do the end around to get to a solution that he wants to find, or to be able to complete a task, and then to find a purpose. One of the things that was isolating to him because of his injury was your mobility. Do you want to talk about that a little bit, and just traveling around, what that did to you?
Yes. One of the things that I began to notice is that any vibration whatsoever was just an extremely painful thing, to the extent that, over the course of time, I discovered ways to deal with it. One was through, cushioning my chair, cushioning my seat, my car seat. I couldn't even drive across town because the vibration would affect me, sometimes for days. Usually it was only a day, hopefully only a few hours, but it would affect me. Later found that inflammation was the culprit. So I began to use ice, and I used ice extensively. I referred to ice as a medication for me. It was as effective as, muscle relaxer, which was another issue. I had muscle spasms, and, opiates and all that. But ice was highly effective. And, I used that for years. And to the extent that vibration was an issue, even on my my lawnmower, I placed big, heavy um, pipe insulation as a bar to push with on my tools in the shop. I wrapped them all in this pipe insulation so that it would cushion that vibration. And later found that gluten would help reduce inflammation. And once I got rid of the gluten, I was able to lower the inflammation, which allowed me to graduate from using so much ice. I still use ice, but I don't use it as extensively as I did. I used to sleep on ice every single night of my life so that I could get up the next day and be somewhat productive, you know, pain permitting, if you will.
I think the other thing here is to talk about sleeping on the ice was to recognize that you're unable to sleep in a bed.
Yes.
And
Yeah,
so you have chosen to modify your sleep behavior so that you're more productive. And that's the other possibilities that you have found. If I sleep in a chair with ice sometimes or positioned, that you have the possibility to have to be more productive the next day because you've taken certain steps to do the end around, so to speak.
Right. Yeah, which has been a terrific thing in that regard. But a word that you had used earlier was the isolation that can come from chronic pain, because I've always been an extrovert, outgoing, out there, and that was the other thing that began to scale back, is not being as extroverted. It took that much energy away from what daily activities that I needed to do. The other thing is, when you sleep with a chair and you're married, it affects intimacy. There's not that closeness. That is another unspoken aspect of my chronic pain journey, and I'm sure lots and lots and lots of other people. But it just speaks to so many different areas of life, and it's almost like chronic pain is trying to encroach into my life and take it over. My job is to stop it at any place that I can and in any way that I possibly can. And that's some of the things that I would love to talk about and hear about, as far as what other people have done to alleviate and to move forward.
I think that's tremendous. And Sean's wife is very supportive in their finding a way to remain close. Even though he sleeps on a chair, she's not very far away. And that's one thing that I find beautiful in their relationship, and the way that they look for the possibilities, that chronic pain doesn't come between them. I think the other thing that's important is how you've continued to battle with your body, not just through chronic pain, but the other things, that the secondary things that of just trying to keep your energy level up, because your pain is draining, so your energy levels down, and then you don't feel so productive, which leads to more isolation. But it's also the way that you have been creative in finding new talents and abilities that maybe you weren't aware of, that don't substitute, but give you another avenue to allow yourself to be expressive. If you want to talk about maybe some of these, I was thinking about the yard art and different ways that you have found new possibilities of expressing your creativity and your abilities.
Yeah, I'm a man of faith, and I don't know how anybody moves forward with something like this without faith. If you can, more power to you, but I can't. And the only thing I can say is that God has been really good to me. He gave me this voice that I've been able to use, that I had not ever used before, but it was a tool that I had, and I was able to do voiceover work for a number of years, and it worked. It paid the bills, and another aspect of that Brenda referred to was the yard art or garden art. As I mentioned, I was a welder, and my wife probably could have been an artist in her own right, outside of being a nurse. Very artistically inclined. Combine that with my welding ability, and we created this thing, well with glass as well as with metal, these yard art creations that we would do shows, and it was a way for us to continue to build intimacy and work together. Sometimes it was contentious, but I saw it as counseling sometimes, but a way for us to work together. It was something I could do. It wasn't physically demanding. It was more, up in my head, and it tapped into my creative side, and it also helped pay the bills. But like you said, the chronic pain it wants to take all your energy. It wants it all. It doesn't want just a little bit. It wants it all. And finding ways to push it back, and finding ways to work underneath the pain and work through the pain, and what's acceptable, what's not. Learning to gauge. One thing that my sister Brenda constantly tells me as well, my wife, is pace yourself, and don't do too much, because when I'm feeling good, I want to do it all, because I've lost out on a number of days or weeks or what have you. I want to get it all done. I want to make up for lost time. But yeah, the pacing, and finding new ways to move forward, and it's almost like a cat and mouse game with chronic pain, finding where I can move forward and it's not going to affect me. It's aha. I got one over on you. So, yeah.
I think the other thing is you're also a mechanic. You're also a salesman. You have so many avenues that you have and still do travel. But the one day when I was out there at your places, how instead of trying to lift it up, you have pulleys. Yeah. You move this over here to get that over there so that you can position it to lift it up. It would be easy to say, I can't do it. But I think you have, because you're so very mechanical, that you find if I do this and that, then I still get it in the place that I needed it to begin with. And I think that those are the things that, like you said, you win over. I've defeated it in this particular part. And I think that is brings joy, because you're saying, see, you don't have me down. And I think if it would be an encouragement to other people to say, you may struggle here, but there's something else over here that you are still capable of doing and find purpose. The other thing where you're at today and where you've discovered abilities is that, you know, you deal with antiques, and you have you use your property for storage that doesn't provide, I mean, it's not that taxing and physical demand that maybe if you were still welding would be. You found avenues to still be productive through the possibilities that were already in, that you already had before it happened. You live on some land, and you didn't know that that's how that would be used when you purchased the land.
No idea. And yeah, you know, I mean, I'm almost reluctant to say this, and seems a little counterintuitive, but in ways it's been a blessing, because it's caused me to stretch in ways and learn in ways that I never would have dreamed of. I never would have pursued. It wouldn't have crossed my mind. The need would not have been there. I just wouldn't have done it. I would have just gone plodding along. So in that regard, it's been a blessing in that regard. So there are benefits. There are benefits to this in doing that. So there are ways forward. Every time there's a way forward. Every time. So
I think that is a nugget. If we were to have a nugget that we could remember, is to know, like you said, I'm a person of faith as well as you, is to know that in the midst of the hard times, there's always the out and the purpose that can take you beyond it. And I think that sometimes we lose focus of that in the pit. And not to go back to a difficult place, but in chronic pain, depression, because of isolation, can bring about, you know, that the isolation brings the depression, and it's common, and it's something that you have to be aware of so that you don't bog down. Would you agree?
oh boy. Yeah, chronic pain and depression, I think, go hand in hand. Of course, depression, you know, didn't show up for quite a while. But you know, when I started in with a pain management doctor who, you know, God bless him, he is very good at what he does. He always has an answer for me. He's been a real benefit in my life. When I started to see him, one of the reasons I went, when I would go to my initial office visits, I was still wearing my pajama pants, you know, my slippers. I was not in a good place. I was very painful. I was down more days than I was up. I was doing very, very little financially. It was very difficult. It was long about 2005. So things had really started to set in by then. And I think that's when the depression reared its ugly head. And nobody wants to admit to that, because if you have depression, then you're mental, and, you know, all of that, which is one of the stigmas related, I think, to chronic pain is, you know, the depression. And another stigma is, you know, sometimes, unfortunately, with, you know, medical personnel as well, family, what have you, is, you know, that you are what they call a seeker for, you know, opiates and, you know, all those kinds of things. And, you know, those are hurdles that need to be overcome. And, you know, my way of going about that kind of has been to not try to go about it, but just to try to go forward. And eventually, hopefully, people are going to fall into line and see that, I'm a straightforward individual and I am trying to make life work.
You followed
And
the rules too, which
yes,
proved to the office that you were a person of integrity and that you were there to find relief through their methods.
yeah, let them fix me. And, honestly, one of the first things that, he did was he saw I was in a bad way. And he gave me some really powerful pain relievers, OxyContin, I think it was, and they were very, very powerful, too powerful, in my opinion, not to get rid of the pain, but too powerful to be able to take those and to function. But the most important piece of advice, I don't even quite remember where it came from, but whatever it says on the bottle, that's what you take. If it says 1 every 6 hours, it's every 6 hours, not every 5.5. I have to do that. And one of the reasons that I have to do that is because my pain doctor is trying to put together an equation of where I am and what my treatment plan is going forward. And if I'm taking them every 4 hours, or if I'm just all over the map, he can't get a solid reading as to where I am. So he's prescribed a method for me, and he's got a scientific formula that he's working on in his head. And I need to work with that. I need to work with him and let him be the doctor, and I'll be the patient. And
that's hard because sometimes, and my background is I worked at a pain management office. So I'll say that I saw the other side of it. And sometimes patients think that the doctor's not sensitive to their need, which starts another cycle. So it almost becomes like a conflict. And I think your position was you trusted the doctor and his methods because you knew that he saw where you were at. And I think that developed a good, solid relationship.
Yes. Yeah. Trust.
And
Trust.
and you're one of the longer, they're considered a veteran there at the
yeah, I think
at
so.
the pain management office.
Yeah. I've been with him since about 05 or so. And, thank God, he has moved me from a place of, all those real heavy duty pain relievers and all of that. I've gone through, a whole iteration of issues, and, chronic pain can cause other issues because you're not as mobile. One of the things that occurred with me is because I wasn't as mobile, my spine, my vertebrae started to lock up, and then I started having issues with that. I would need to see a chiropractor, and some of those areas I don't even know if they're ever going to loosen up. But there's just all these things. Some of it's hereditary. There's just all these issues that play into one another, that need to be addressed, and having that trust with my pain management doctor is incredibly beneficial and important to me moving forward. To the extent that I'm down to a lot of, for lack of a better term, holistic remedies, injections, as needed. PT for me is daily. I do PT every day. It takes me a couple hours to get going in the morning. That's stretches and, heat or ice or whatever the case may be. But that is just, now that part is who I am. That's what I do. So other people get up and go running in the morning. This is what I do. It is what I do to get up, go in the morning. So it's my way forward.
I think too is it goes back to the possibilities. You've seen that it's possible to be more functional when you get up and you stretch. I will admit, Sean can touch his toes with chronic pain. I have no chronic pain, but I cannot touch my toes. So I mean, there are things that he has done that has preserved mobility that I think is very good. We're going to talk about other topics on other additions to this, how it affects your family,
Yeah.
your ability to get a job, how others perceive you, how to move forward, all kinds of topics that we're going to talk about. But we want to be a positive and encouraging place for people for where they find themselves in with chronic pain. A couple of statistics that I think in getting ready for this was that people that have high impact chronic pain, which you are in that category, which means that it is debilitating, and that there are over 15 million people that suffer from this level of chronic pain in the United States. It's not often talked about because of the stigma. And Sean and I have spent a lot of time discussing people's perception because they don't understand. Kind of like go back to that thing when he talked about the wreck. The car looked okay, but the frame was bent. Sean doesn't look like he has chronic pain because he doesn't wear it on his face. He's not drooped over. He's not angry. He's not frustrated. It doesn't allow the bad moods to come in. Whereas if some people want you to look like that you should be in chronic pain. And so there's a certain amount of disbelief or credibility issues. Those are some of the things that we want to talk about so that there are people that can be more empathetic to the demands and to the determination that it requires to persevere through. Those are some of the things that we would like to talk about. But Sean, in closing, if you had somebody sitting in front of you that is struggling with finding possibilities and purpose and peace as they walk through this journey of chronic pain, can you spend a minute or two or whatever is on your heart? What would you tell that person in front of you?
I would say that there is a way forward. This doesn't need to be the end. This doesn't need to define you. There are ways to work through this. One of the important things that one of the nurses at the chronic pain office has repeatedly said to me is listen to your body. And that's important for them, is, even doing a diagram of this is where the pain is. It's sharp here. It's dull and aching there. Make a map. Become a student of your pain. And when you're a student of it, you can address it. You can find ways to address each issue as it presents itself in whatever way it manifests. There are avenues ahead that are really quite good. That can, like I said, I went into areas that I never thought that I would go into as a result of this, that I'm very, very thankful for. It's a little bit off topic, but I had a thought the other day that if chronic pain were a person, what would we do with that person? How would we address that person as an individual? You know, what would I do with that person? I have my own thoughts on that. Or, you know, as a society, you know, as a family, you know, what would we do with that person? And it almost does have a type of personality. It we talked about the depression, and you know, I skated around that, you know, fairly good there for a minute, but I think we're going to get back to it. The depression can be quite deep. Chronic pain can be very, very evil, very demanding. It can go to a very, very dark place, and that's where it wants to go. That's where it lives, and we have to resist that with everything that's in us. And I think that's probably why I'm a man of faith, is because I won't go there. I can't go there. You can't live there. It's not a viable option. There are ways forward, and that's what I would like, you know, from this, is to find ways that other people have found to move forward as well. So I don't know if that answers your question or not, or if that's more off topic.
I think it does. I think that chronic pain person lives in your house and wants to take over.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
in my marriage, everything. It wants it all.
with interest.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think the other thing is, and I hope that for the viewers that are watching this, that I hope that you see that it's not the end.
That's right.
It is not a, it's not a jail cell. But there is hope, there's a future, and there might be things that you're going to discover inside of yourself that are wonderful, that you never dreamed were there.
Yep.
I think that that what we want to share is that there's so much more to who people are other than their pain, and that we have to make sure that that part of them stays relevant and stays in the forefront.
Yeah.
so that you don't get lost behind the pain.
Yeah. Yep. Agreed.
And so next time we're hoping to have another time of a view from under the bus, and maybe we'll talk about next week why it's named View from Under the Bus. And we hope that you will put your comments down underneath. Is there anything you'd like for people to comment down below, Sean, that could be helpful to you or be insightful for you?
Questions are always good. Maybe created more questions than answers, but questions, and mostly what would you share about your journey with chronic pain? What are ways that you have found forward? What would be your suggestion as to how people can find a way forward, how people can find relief through this? That's really the most important, I think.
I think so too. And just as a disclaimer, some of the topics are mentioned about being gluten-free or other medications. We are not physicians. We don't claim to give any kind of medical advice. This is just Sean's experience and how he's moved forward and moved to a level of productivity and purpose that I think is inspiring. And Sean, I want to thank you for your time and for sharing your heart and being transparent. And we look forward to speaking to you next week, and hopefully find some more people to listen and to enjoy this. Please subscribe, and so that we can continue forward. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Brittany.
So that's the end of that.